So I've noticed a pattern starting to form as I dive deeper into the Metroidvania genre. I'm having a much better time with modern ones than I have with the classics of years past. Guacamelee, Ori and the Blind Forest, and my latest venture, which you totally need to play by the way, Axiom Verge. Obviously a love letter to the Metroid franchise, Axiom Verge wears its influence on its sleeve. Tall vertical hallways to climb with branching paths outward, similar weapons and enemies, bosses that turn red the more you damage them. You could almost even call it a spiritual successor. But at least for me, Axiom excels where Metroid lacks, and it kept all the best parts of the series while leaving the worst behind. In fact, probably the only thing that isn't better is the story. I mean, it doesn't have sideburns here and a bikini at the end, so that's a 0 out of 10, am I right? But really, the plot is unnecessarily complicated, although it has its fair share of plot twists and gets pretty meta about halfway through. It even has in-game explanations for things like dying and coming back to life, which is a nice touch. But the most obvious comparison to its predecessor is how the map and levels are laid out. Axiom does an incredible job of easing you into the size of the world slowly. At the very beginning, you'll encounter 4 dead ends that you can't pass until you get better equipment, like these pink barriers, breakable blocks, and this glitch thingy. In fact, this one you won't be able to cross till near the end of the game. So there's really only one path to go, but it's introducing you to some of the obstacles you'll face along your journey. As you gain power-ups, more options become available of where to go, but the game will also strategically cut you off from returning to old parts of the map so that you don't get overwhelmed. Here, this wall forces you to remain in this area until you figure out the mystery of seeing double, and here, it prevents you from climbing back up until you get about 4 more power-ups. It's giving you less space to work with so that you don't wander around for hours in the wrong area. There's really only one time I can think of where it makes you go way out of your way to get the next big upgrade, but by that point, speedy shortcuts are unlocked and movement itself feels responsive and fun. That's most important. Exploring and getting lost didn't feel like a chore, it was enjoyable. Except when you realize the next path was right in front of your face the whole time and you're just an idiot. There are a few other changes that I felt were nice quality of life improvements as well. In Super Metroid, there are all sorts of colored doors that only open if you use certain weapons. In Axiom Verge, every door is open, but you'll normally encounter a dead end in the next room. This small change makes a world of difference though. Instead of climbing shafts going, which door do I need to open again? You can quickly look at your map and see, oh, here's a room I wasn't able to complete yet, let's go to it. Furthermore, they've added a reminder feature where you can drop a pin on your map to come back to later once you have more abilities. Instead of resetting your last save file when you die, Axiom Verge saves every step of the way. So even if you do bite the dust, it'll still remember everything you did and you just need to walk back a few rooms. Not to mention that ammo and micromanagement is basically non-existent. Tom Happ, who is the sole developer by the way, has learned from the past, cut out tedium, and streamlined the whole process. That's not to say the game isn't challenging, however. You'll die a lot, and I like that they provide a normal or hard mode, not an easy mode. It's like, you're gonna play it the way I intended or even tougher, there ain't no easy way out here. The bosses, while not overly difficult, are creative in how you tackle each one. They have sweet spots where they're vulnerable, and sometimes you'll need to deal with the other things flying at you in order to get a good shot. Often you'll have to switch between different weapons to have a better chance of taking them down. Learning patterns and being patient is key to these fights. But perhaps the best part of Axiom Verge is the weapons and abilities you gain along the way. Each one is unique and unlike any others I've seen in Metroidvanias. Even cooler is how there are multiple uses for each one. For example, the laser drill is used to break open rocks, but it can also be used to damage enemies, especially ones that are immune to your regular blaster shot. The remote drone can be launched into small holes you can't fit into, and normally fights its way through tiny gauntlets to reach a power-up or unlock a door, but it can also be used to scout out the way ahead of you and take damage so that you don't have to. My favorite though is the address Disruptor. Often you'll find glitched barriers that need to be broken with the Disruptor to pass, but it also can be used to create platforms to reach new areas, or even change the attributes of enemies. From making them move slower, to shooting health instead of acid, to turning deadly lasers into friendly beams that kill enemies and not you. It's so creative, and I loved hitting every enemy with this just to see what would happen. It's what makes Axiom Verge stand on its own as opposed to being written off as a Metroid clone. Real quickly, I wanted to talk about the ending for those that have beaten it, so if you don't want to see spoilers, click here to skip ahead. Okay? Cool. So throughout the game, Trace struggles with killing the enemies. He doesn't want to if he doesn't have to. He'll try to talk his way out of each battle, but to no avail. Now at the very end, he says he'll shut down the breach attractor as long as he doesn't have to kill the final boss. Trace reaches said final boss, named Aethatos, and he gives him the spiel about how what he's doing isn't really bad after all, blah blah blah, and asks for your help. But without any options or choices, Trace replies, "Hell no, you self-righteous jerk." And then you fight him. It seems a little out of character for what we've learned Trace to be like. Now, I get it, maybe they didn't want you to have to pick an answer to ruin the flow of the conversation, but in the boss battle directly before this, you can choose to fight it or just walk right past it without killing. You even get an achievement called Pacifist for sparing it. So what if this decision changed the outcome of the ending? What if that choice triggered a peaceful solution instead? Nah, there's only one ending, and all this build-up for a potential non-lethal route was squandered. It just seemed like a big missed opportunity for something that could have been really cool and memorable. At least the fight is pretty fun, but I digress. Axiom Verge might look like a Metroid sequel with a fresh coat of paint, but it's so much more than that. Not only is it full of extraordinary power-ups, but it's chock full of secrets that hold much more than meets the eye. It looks and sounds great. The soundtrack is just the right combo of eerie and catchy. There's a lot at stake when you make a game with such intense homage. You're gonna be judged pretty critically, but it was refreshing to see a game with so much polish take the genre to new heights and show what it can continue to be in the future.